As we discussed on the show last week, the Invictus Games has been on in Vancouver. Now, this is what Harry had to say during an interview on the Canadian television network CTV.
Hey, what's going through your mind right now as you're watching this and seeing the competitors pour their hearts and souls onto the court?
One of the things I care most about is the atmosphere, because I mean, maybe it doesn't mean that much to them, but for me, to be able to create the atmosphere for them makes them feel like superstars. The harder thing to do is to merge the general public with military, and for them to feel like, I don't have any connection to military families, but I went to this sporting display and it was incredible.
He also spoke to People magazine while in Canada, saying, "To have my wife here supporting me is amazing. I love that she's by my side. It's such an important piece to this whole adventure." Now, Louise, did we learn anything new about Harry in any of these interviews?
I think the interviews reinforce what he has described as a sacred obligation he has to these veterans, and it's so wonderful to see him in his space where he really does flourish, supporting veterans and their families. And it's great to see him, really pushing that message and being so devoted to it. What was also interesting, I thought, is that TV interview he revealed pretty much that there won't be any more siblings for their children anytime soon. His view was that 1 or 2 kids is probably good. He has friends, of course, who have 5 children. He thinks they're crazy, and he said, well, it's your own fault. You've got 5 kids, clearly. So I thought that was rather interesting, because royals don't really tend to go very public with their sort of family planning thoughts on that matter. But he also said that Lilibet and Archie may end up coming to the Invictus Games themselves one day. He was very much looking forward to heading back to California and talking to them about the event itself, and he explains to them what it's like for athletes who perhaps are missing a limb or have been hurt in combat, and what it's like to actually perform in those games. And he said the kids are fascinated, so it's great to see that legacy he's passing on to the children as well. I really can't fault him when it comes to the Invictus Games.
No, indeed, can't fault him at all. Totally agree. Angela, is there anything else you'd like to add there?
Oh, I always feel incredibly sad when I see them at the Invictus Games. Look, they looked in their element, he and Meghan, and the reason I feel sad is because this could have been Harry's life's work. Every 2 years he goes to the Invictus Games, but that doesn't sustain him between times. If he had stayed as a member of the royal family and he had stayed in England and he'd retained all the work and the connections with the military, this was his real opus. This was what he understands. If you think about militaries all over the world, they are finding it very difficult to recruit and retain. Harry could have been the poster boy for this type of career. He could have worked with militaries, not just in the UK, but across the Commonwealth, and he could have made it look like a desirable career. Look, he's doing great work, as Louise says, with Invictus and with returned soldiers. But there could have been a far bigger work for him to do in this space, and I just think it's really sad. I think he would have loved it as well. He seems so purposeful, so happy, so engaged whenever he's working in this area.
And Angela, still on the Invictus Games, there was a bit of fuss around Meghan leaving early. Do we know what that was all about?
That's right. She left after 5 days. She flew back to California. Look, this was always the plan. She wanted to get back and see her children. She was with them, of course, for Valentine's Day. That meant she wasn't with Harry. She did the same, actually, in 2023 when she was in Germany for the Invictus Games. Look, she loves going there. She knows she's getting a great audience at the Invictus Games. There's great crossover for her in terms of her brand. You know, it's a joyous occasion. I think it also, being in Canada this year, was wonderful for them because, of course, they have that strong connection with Canada. But what will be interesting, Caro, is to see what happens when it's in Birmingham in 2 years' time. Of course, we haven't seen much of Meghan in the UK over the last few years, and whether or not she turns up or not will be intriguing.
Louise, the Daily Mail didn't miss another trip on a private jet. What's that story?
So instead of getting a commercial flight, of which, of course, the optics would be a lot better for Meghan, given she's somebody who works a lot in that environmental space and has won Green Awards, but clearly that dedication to be a conservative person is not sort of parlayed out into her actual travel plans itself. Yes, so she took a private jet from Vancouver to Seattle for a scheduled stop, but we don't really know why she went to Seattle, and then on to Santa Barbara itself. And I believe it was something like 800 100 gallons of fuel, apparently, which is a lot of fuel and like oodles of carbon dioxide pumped out into the atmosphere. So please, these celebrities who go down the green route and then get on their private jets, we've absolutely had enough of it. I do not understand why they don't see it is such a hugely hypocritical thing to do.
Yeah, they don't seem to be too bothered by it, are they? Now, speaking of which, Meghan has always had an interest in politics. But Angela, it's recently come to light that Harry and Meghan have been apparently providing funds to various Democrat Party-aligned operatives via their charity. What do we know so far?
That's right, Carrie. So Archwell, which let's just point out doesn't have huge amounts of money, but has been making consistent donations to different Democrat-aligned agencies, companies, not-for-profits. So one that's really intriguing is to a Democratic-aligned company that basically is a disinformation expert, a woman called Gior Craig. Now, they've paid out money to her 2 years running. What I can't work out is whether they're paying it to support this woman in her work with the Democrats, or whether she's a disinformation expert who's on their books, that they actually are requiring her services to counter some of the what they perceive as disinformation about them. There's other donations. There's a donation to a not-for-profit which is set up by some major rich players who fund the Democrats, and also to Ashley Biden, who set up a women's charity. That's the biggest donation they've made, $250,000. Now, when questioned about these donations, because of course the royal family have to be neutral when it comes to political issues, the response from their team was that it's misguided to think that this is any sort of political endorsement, and that they were simply supporting agencies and charities that they think require that support and are doing good in the world. So interesting to see.
Very interesting. And still on Meghan, Louise, and a recent New York Post article has suggested that she's upset and a bit stressed about the backlash regarding American Riviera Orchard. It's always a mouthful for me, and it's probably a mouthful for others. Understandable. Things haven't quite gone to plan. I'm not quite sure how she resurrects things, though.
Well, that's a very good question. I think perhaps we should call it American Riviera ordeal, because that's what it's become for Meghan. And this sort of information's come via Tom Quinn, who of course has written that warts and all behind the scenes with the Palace staff book, which is just dropping bombs all over the place. Apparently Meghan's sort of dissatisfaction with how her career as a lifestyle guru is going is causing issues with her marriage, because she's so stressed about it. But let's face it, it's still a bunch of trademarks and a sort of an ambit claim at the moment. If she actually launched a product, it may actually assuage some of the sort of the stress she's having around it, or the guilt that it's not working, or the pressure and so forth. And I do think she's become too niche in a way. I think she's become too, wanting to do everything and everyone, and not actually, she's not a businesswoman clearly. So I'm not surprised she's stressed because it's not working.
And Angela, I've only got about 45 seconds left, but a very interesting piece by Camilla Tomney in the UK Telegraph regarding Prince William being the royal family's secret weapon. What's her proposition and what's your view?
Absolutely think she's right. She makes the point that William has sort of come into his own, that we thought that Spare and some of the revelations that Prince Harry gave in that book would be destabilising for William. Quite the opposite. Obviously what's happened with his family, having his father and his wife both having cancer, it's shown the man and the mettle that Prince William has. He's 42. It's the age where his grandmother had been on the throne for 17 years, but we're finally seeing a William that we can believe in as a monarch. And across politics, his meetings with Trump, all of his endeavours, that there's a synchronicity, there's a strength, and there's that real family commitment with him and Kate, that we believe that this is a solid family, the family that Diana wanted for herself and unfortunately didn't get.
That's an excellent observation. Angela Mollard, Louise Roberts, thank you as always.